I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics. Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for March the 20th, 2026. This week, we have started a multi-part series addressing avoided issues in the Torah. Because one of the biggest issues out there, one of the biggest theological matters within today's Messianic sphere of influence involves, first of all, reading the Torah, the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses from some kind of an original audience perspective first. Ancient Israel in the ancient Near East, and then from that, being able to trace the Torah as the foundation of Holy Scripture in the rest of Holy Scripture. So, unfortunately, we know a lot of people in the Messianic world who treat the Torah as though it is timeless. The Torah is not timeless. The original recipients, the ancient Israelites in the ancient Near East, getting ready to enter into the Promised Land, it's foundational, but God's revelation continually builds upon it. And in particular, as we discussed yesterday, viewing Moses' teaching in light of the Messiah's teaching, his fulfillment of the Torah, his definitive interpretation and application of the Torah, for many in the Messianic community is very easy, because to them, the Messiah event is the most important thing. But for people who are more in Hebrew roots or one law, the Messiah is not the most important thing. The Torah is the most important thing. And that is why we can frequently run into conflicts of interpretation, application, etc. With some of us having interpretations and applications which sit to the left of many people, because the Torah is it. The Torah is God's definitive revelation, and there's nothing else, which we don't believe. We believe that God's Torah remains relevant, important instruction, not just as a matter of biblical history, not just as a matter of theological foundation, but because the Messiah himself said so. All right, now if you'll please turn with me to the Messianic Apologetics website, messianicapologetics.net, click on the Articles tab, and then, I got the wrong one here, but then go down to the, go down to the letter F, addressing the frequently avoided issues Messianics encounter in the Torah. Click there, and then a PDF file will open up, and this is where we left off yesterday with the frequently avoided issues. Now, to recap some of what I said yesterday, how many issues are there in the Torah or the Pentateuch, in the weekly reading, whatever it is, you encounter it, and you have a question about what are we supposed to do with this? Not just a matter of how do we observe it, or can we observe it in the 20th, 21st century, but what do I do with this? An excellent example would be that of slavery. God delivered Israel from its slavery to Egypt, takes them through the Red Sea, they go to Mount Sinai, they're in their wilderness journey, and very, very quickly in the Torah, you see instructions regarding what the Israelites themselves were to do with the institution of slavery. And you're kind of like, what is this? Right? If you have been there and you've not known what to do, you're not alone. Very frequently, there will be people in the Messianic community who'll just run off and say, oh, well, the instructions on slavery, they teach me about my relationship to Yeshua as a bondservant. Time out. This is where it's pretty obvious that you have to understand slavery in the community of ancient Israel for what it meant, set against slavery as an institution in the ancient Near East. And where, for example, slavery in an ancient Israelite context may have been very different and even subversive and even liberal compared to slavery in other ancient Near Eastern societies. That does not tend to be the way people in the Messianic community examine issues. Sorry to say that. But as we move ahead, we're going to have to address things like this more and more frequently. So let's get into the frequently avoided issues. It is sad to say this, but the Jewish synagogue, which does not acknowledge Yeshua as the Messiah, often has a better handle on what commandments in the Torah can and cannot be followed today than much of the Messianic community does. The very question of halakha, meaning the way to walk, in the Jewish theological tradition arose precisely because people found themselves in circumstances and situations to which the Torah did not directly apply. In order to afford the Torah the authority which it has for God's people, Jewish innovation had to step in and determine which commandments could be followed in new circumstances and what could actually be done. Most of these new circumstances included living in the diaspora and how changes in both technology and economy affected the relevance of various commandments. While God's ethical and moral standards remained constant, as did his instructions on what were to make Israel a unique people, a good feature of the rabbinic tradition is its testimony to the fact that not all of the commandments are applicable for today. And that is without recognizing Yeshua as the Messiah who atoned for the world. Yeah, not to get into some of the minutia here about the rabbinic tradition, because just like ancient Christian literature, ancient Jewish literature, it's broad, it's diverse, it's vast. But for example, can you, as a Messianic believer, consult literature like the Mishnah or the Talmud to sort through, okay, in the Torah, for example, there's different agricultural instructions, different economic instructions clearly given to ancient Israel in an ancient Near Eastern context, where wealth was concentrated in one's agricultural produce. And yes, also things like gold and silver. But moving onward in history, technology changes, forms of economies change. You've got concepts of banking, things like this. How did later Jewish people sort through some of these original Israelite instructions? And you'd be able to see in various bodies of Jewish literature, depending on what the issue is, some common human wisdom, some common human approaches, useful approaches to that kind of instruction. And that's without recognizing the gravity of the Messiah event. The fact that halakha has to be something which adapts to the times is clear even within the biblical period. The Torah specifically commanded that Passover was to be celebrated in the place of the Lord's choosing, Deuteronomy 16:16, that place being Jerusalem. And indeed, there is adequate biblical testimony that many did expel the effort to go to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, excuse me, including Yeshua's own family, Luke 2:41-43. Yet, Acts 20, verse 6 indicates how the Apostle Paul commemorated the Passover unleavened bread in Philippi. Would this have been considered a legitimate Passover celebration according to the Torah? If one is a strict black and white reading of the text, no. If one sits firmly within the Jewish theological halakha, yes. It was one thing for Yeshua's family to travel to and from Galilee to Jerusalem to commemorate the Passover. But for Jews living as far east as Persia or as far west as Spain in the first century, it would have been impossible to go to Jerusalem for all three of the pilgrimage feasts. Accommodations had to be made, and the local synagogue would undoubtedly be a place of gathering for prayer and commemoration during these times for those who could not make the long journey. Recognizing that God is merciful to his people in those areas where they are unable to perfectly follow his law was also important. Indeed, we've got Passover coming up in just a few weeks in the Messianic community. I don't know anyone who's going to be making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but I do know many people who are going to do the best they can in a diaspora American setting, that's my setting, to remember and honor the command for Passover. Understanding an historical reality like this is only a third of the difficulties which today's Messianics face when it comes to the commandments of the Torah and their applicability. Another third comes in the form of how the Torah's commandments are specifically classified. Think through this for a moment. The Reformed Christian tradition has often subdivided the Pentateuchal ordinances between moral, civil, and ceremonial, with the latter two no longer being applicable because of Yeshua's sacrifice, while rightfully believing that the Torah's moral or ethical statutes can never be revoked and were upheld by Yeshua and the apostles. This threefold division is rather artificial, as a reading of the Torah itself indicates a much more organic division, as commandments applying to males, females, children, priests, farmers, business persons, married, unmarried, etc., are to be followed by those sectors of society. Some commandments apply to all, and then other commandments apply to only certain people. Even when Bible readers recognize these much more natural divisions among the Torah mitzvot, there has not been a great deal of messianic engagement with what scholars often refer to as apodictic or casuistic laws. So this is a category. These are two categories you have heard me refer to before. You will definitely encounter them in Jewish, Christian academic examination, technical commentaries on the 5 books of Moses, Jewish and Christian, apodictic, casuistic. And these are things which do come from a reading of the Torah's instruction. When you are encountering something and then you start making observations and you're like, oh, that's the kind of instruction that is, or this direction over here is best classified in this way. This is important for you to keep in mind, not only as it involves, yes, understanding many instructions for an ancient Israelite, ancient Near Eastern perspective, but also as you learn to evaluate finer details and you can see people come to conclusions which might be different than some of the initial conclusions you have come to. And you might start thinking, oh, well, that person, they're liberal. They've been trained at cemetery. What do they know? They're trying to look for loopholes to not use some of these instructions, when in actuality, what might be the case is that various examiners, interpreters have been going a little deeper. They've been considering a little more information. They've been making some observations which are there, but some people gloss over them, and they've come to a more forward-thinking perspective because they are looking at the text at a level that many people, if they're just reading it and they're assuming it's written directly to them, wouldn't come to. Torah commandments, which would be considered apodictic, are most often those with some kind of "thou shalt not" attached to them, indicating that they are immutable principles which cannot, at least easily, be amended or revoked. Excuse me. They concern things which remain constant for the sake of God's people and in making them holy and set apart as he has called them out to be. The 10 Commandments are clearly in this category, as are many other ordinances which can be easily followed today with a minimum of difficulties. Other than the ethical and moral ordinances of the Pentateuch, which the historic Christian church has always held dear, they include many of the things which have helped constitute Jewish identity and continuance over the centuries. So, an apodictic law seen in the Torah is probably going to have some kind of thou shalt not associated with it, be things like the 10 Commandments, some of the major ethical and moral matters. Now, things get a little more interesting. In contrast to this, casuistic laws or case laws include those things which clearly have some kind of timestamp on them. An excellent example of this is Deuteronomy 23:23, which says, "No Ammonite or Moabite shall enter the assembly of the Lord, none of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall ever enter the assembly of the Lord." New American Standard. Indicating that the 11th generation could very well enter into the Kahal Adonai. However, there are other casuistic types of commandments in the Torah which are not as easily classified as such. They have to be examined on a case-by-case basis. And the interpreter who holds to the continued validity of the Torah has to ask if such commandments only concerned an ancient setting, economy, and technology level, certainly teaching us things about God's character and ancient Israel's uniqueness, or whether they more easily apply to all cultural settings and all generations. And indeed, this is the place, what are considered to be casuistic or case laws, this is the place where you're going to start seeing, especially as we move ahead in time, as Messianic theology and engagement improves, you're going to start seeing a lot of differences between people. I mean, somebody like me who is theologically trained, religious studies, biblical studies, Hebrew, Greek, knows how to access technical commentary, secondary and tertiary literature, you're going to see me hold to some perspectives that are much more forward thinking than you're going to see manifest in many of your on-the-ground Torah studies in the Messianic community, where people, well, I'm just reading what it says here. Well, I'm reading what it says here too, and I'm reading it with some other information and factors in mind. And I'm also not looking at it as though it is timeless instruction for all places and all times in some cases. I'm looking at it in light of I'm looking at it in light of God's further revelation in the prophets' writings, and most especially the okay, we've had the video go in and out just a little bit. Probably some kind of internet issue. Okay, let's move on. Reasoning through Torah commandments and those which are applicable or non-applicable will be very difficult for some sectors of today's Messianic movement. The Apostle Paul wrote Timothy, "We know that the law is good if one uses it properly." 1 Timothy 1:8, New International Version. Learning how to do this will be a challenge for some of today's Messianic people as they weigh, number one, the impact and changes inaugurated by Yeshua's atoning sacrifice, number two, the role of halakha in the Jewish theological tradition, and number three, whether a Torah ordinance is apodictic or casuistic. A great deal of the controversy, if not experienced now, then certainly to be experienced in the future, regarding following Torah will not be focused around things like Shabbat, memorializing the appointed times, or kashrut. A great deal of the controversy surrounding following Torah will regard those things in the Torah which directly concerned the ancient Near Eastern world to which Moses' teaching was originally given to Israel. How do we deal with those things in our 21st century world? Could very well determine how our faith community rises or falls, at least in various areas of ministry and relevance. Okay, so we know, you go to a Messianic congregation, no different than a Jewish synagogue. You got 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and you're going to have more opinions because of all the people from Christian backgrounds also in attendance. But just sorting through what Torah instructions, apodictic, casuistic, and then factoring in the Messiah event, his definitive interpretation of Moses' teaching, factors of halakha seen in the Jewish theological tradition, as well as being 20th, 21st century people in a modern setting, you're going to start seeing a lot more diversity of approaches. That's why a lot of people don't understand me sometimes, because yes, I'm theologically trained and I'm engaged with perspectives which, if all you're looking at is the text and you're not then looking at things more deeply in Hebrew, Greek, technical commentaries, some ancient background, you're going to very quickly see, okay, if you're open-minded and you're open to going a little deeper, oh, that's why they came to that interpretation, rather than, oh, this is what my English Bible says, this is what Strong Concordance says, and that's it. That kind of fundamentalism and rigidity and dogma has caused so many problems. It's been the cause of so much legalism, whereas we are going to have to improve in our interpretational skills and our ability to engage as we look ahead. Okay, so of the 7 frequently avoided issues which I have chosen to address, which of course we will begin on Monday, about half of them have some kind of direct applicability for the 21st century, which I have indicated by the designation today. They concern obvious ethical and moral issues which the Messianic movement cannot afford to avoid, and where Jewish and Christian biblical scholarship is far, far more developed. The other part of these issues primarily concern an ancient setting, most often where the Torah's instruction for ancient Israel ran into direct contrast or subversion to the law codes of their neighbors, indicated by the designation ancient times. Okay. When examining those issues, we should see the trajectory of God's word at work, as the Pentateuchal legislation often laid the first stepping stones back to the idyllic state first seen in Eden, which would then be continued in the further revealing of salvation history in the prophets' writings and apostolic scriptures. These are issues where there can be a great deal of confusion in the Messianic community, which needs to be quickly dispelled. As we prepare to go through these issues next week, you will doubtlessly see things which are avoided or overlooked at many Messianic Torah studies, and many of your questions concerning them will hopefully be answered. This selection of 7 topics is by no means exhaustive, but should give you a good idea about how to approach similar and related things witnessed in the Torah when you encounter that parashah next time in your yearly Torah studies. You should have your senses trained to consider the ancient context of various biblical commandments and what they meant when set against that context, indeed indicating whether such things should or can be followed today. So we're going to be going through 7 frequently avoided issues. These are things which, in my experience, because again, this analysis was originally put together in 2008. So it goes back to 2008. It intersected with me taking Old Testament introduction and realizing that, oh, there are all these things the Messianic community avoids. Why? And hopefully, as this addressing avoided issues in the Torah series concludes, you'll be able to just go that much deeper into what these matters are. So Monday, we'll pick up with obviously a major issue today, human beings made in the image of God. That is definitely something which affects one's reading of the Torah. It affects how we look at other people, and it affects some of the things which go on in our daily lives and our interaction with not just those in our own community, but in other communities and other religious groups and social groups, what have you. Okay, so that concludes our theology roundup for today. Let's now move on to our news roundup. Now, we do the news roundup after the theology roundup because the news is time sensitive. And of course, it changes from day to day. And not only does it change from day to day, but right now with Operation Epic Fury, Operation Roaring Lion against the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's changing from hour to hour. So while I'm going to be going through a number of news stories, this just gives you some high points regarding what needs to be discussed. High points which I have encountered in my passive review of current events. Okay, now before we get into the news, I have a brief announcement. So I want you to listen very carefully. This morning, and this is kind of at the urging of some of you, this morning on both X, formerly Twitter, as well as Instagram. And this is important because we've got the weekend coming up. I have started to repost some of the stories which I passively encounter on social media. So this morning, of course, we'll get into this later. One of the big news stories, sadly, was the death of Chuck Norris. And I reposted a number of those stories. So, of course, in the news roundup, we would be covering all of these stories in a digest form as we go through them and as I make comments and observations. But with the weekend coming up, and who knows what's going to happen this weekend, if you're following me on Instagram, you're following me on X, look for various stories reposted. And of course, I'm keeping a log of these and then a listing of these as we go through them in the news roundup. So if you are not following me on social media, because Messianic Insider is live streamed to YouTube and it is streamed to X, go to MessianicApologetics.net and you can see I've actually moved the icons to the upper left-hand corner rather than the upper right-hand corner because on our stream, that's blocked by the Messianic Insider live box. So here you can follow me, social media, X, social media, Instagram. Just click there and it'll take you to my accounts and you can do that. Of course, also you see the links to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So that should make it a lot easier for you. But yeah, what you should start seeing, and I've already started this morning, and then once we conclude today, and then the shorts from this episode will be posted, you'll start seeing some news stories reposted. And just for logistics sake, and there's going to be some getting used to this. If it's on Instagram or it's on X, that's the only place I will repost it. There's not going to be any cross-pollination, really. And I'll announce this again over the next few days for those of you who need to sign up and start following me on those platforms. Okay, so all the news stories I do go through, these are not things I go out hunting for. Like everyone, I check social media a few times throughout the day, and these are things I passively encounter, mainly on X as well as Instagram. Number one, we need to be praying for peace. Israel, Gaza, the Middle East, Iran. Pray for the Messianic Jewish believers, all the Christian believers, everyone that they have an encounter with the living Yeshua, because that's the only answer to the Middle East problem, only answer to the world's problem. Be praying for the safety of our men and women in uniform, our allies, the IDF. Pray for a decisive, quick resolution to Operation Epic Fury, Roaring Lion. Number two, be praying for peace, Russia and Ukraine. And number three, be praying for reason and sanity here in the Western Hemisphere, the United States, and everything else which is going on. Okay, so the full list of news stories I'm going through, this will be available for you to look at later today when this episode is archived at MessianicApologetics.net. Okay, our first news story, and this is from Visegrad 24, posted yesterday, 10 a.m., but I got it after our show yesterday. The House of Lords has voted in favor of upholding the abortion reform passed by MPs last year, which removes criminal penalties for self-induced abortions. That means women can perform their own abortions at home for any reason up until the point of birth without the risk of being prosecuted. And here we see the Archbishop of Canterbury and leader of the Church of England called it a legally, morally, and practically complex issue that requires public consultation. So many people, of course, right now, they are absolutely in horror at what has taken place in the United Kingdom, absolutely just incensed that the abortion laws in the UK, particularly England and Wales, have gotten this far to the point where a child can be aborted up to the point of birth. And mind you, uh, 50, 60 years ago in many countries, the laws were basically abortion as a form of birth control was illegal. There were a number of exceptions to save the life of a mother, rape, incest, extreme mental trauma, something like that. And for the most part, conservative evangelicals, myself, that's where we would be. Because you eliminate abortion as a form of birth control, you eliminate well over 98% of potential abortions. There are a lot of people who live in the UK, they live in the British Isles, are going to be making a lot of observations, a lot of comments on this. Of course, there are people here in the United States in various regions, various states who would agree with this. I live in the state of Texas, which has some of the most conservative abortion laws on the books. It's very difficult for a woman to have an abortion, but these observations are being made. Actually, some of as I've been able to monitor it, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mullally, she expressed some skepticism to this. So she wasn't, even though she is very left-wing, she wasn't totally comfortable with going along with all of this, from what I could tell. But this is developing. We'll continue to make note of it, but you are going to see people not outside the UK, but inside the UK make an observation that what is happening to our society, and was just so sad about it. And especially, we looked at some of the things from St. Patrick's Day earlier. I mean, the British Isles for centuries were the main hub of the Protestant Reformation, Protestant theology. Some of the first people to begin to see that God was not finished with the Jews. The Jewish people needed to be supported. They needed to be evangelized. They needed to be supported in their return back home to the Holy Land. But now what is happening? And of course, here in America, celebrating this year our 250th year of independence, we still have deep cultural, deep historical ties to the United Kingdom. Somebody like me, who is mainly Scottish and English ancestrally. Yes, I got German too. But we just look and we're like, oh my goodness, what is happening? And usually Europe is ahead of America by a decade or two with some of those liberal trends, not denying that some of them are already here, but it's just very upsetting. It's very disturbing and heartbreaking. Okay, here's a post from End Time Headlines. Yes, End Time Headlines is dispensational and it's pre-trib, but the points raised by this, very, very useful, especially in our day of growing supersessionism. The church has not replaced Israel, and here are a number of useful passages. Romans 11, 1 through 29, Genesis 17, 7 and 8, Jeremiah 31, 31 to 37, Israel's covenant is permanent as the sun, moon, Luke 21, 24, Acts 1, 6 and 7. Jesus affirmed Israel's future restoration. And here on point 5, Romans 11, 17 through 24, Gentiles are grafted in, not replacing Israel. And indeed, that's, I think, the main issue that today's Messianic community faces as it regards wild olive branches grafted into the tree. It is correctly recognized that wild branches grafted into the tree don't become like natural branches grafted into the tree. They do retain a significant level of their own distinctiveness as wild branches. The one thing I almost never hear discussed, and this is endemic of how too much of our Messianic spirituality is focused on differences first and not common faith first. the wild branches are olive branches. Well, what do you mean? You got wild olive branches and natural olive branches, as opposed to natural olive branches and apple branches. Okay, because the Holy Scriptures, the Torah, specifically prohibits the mixing of multiple types of seed, two types of seed. And the fact that all of them, whether wild or natural, are olives, commonality is something which too frequently gets overlooked. And that is something which is going to have to begin to change. We got to have to start focusing on common faith first, because the reason the Messianic community has not grown the way it should is because of this differences, distinctions first. Nobody argues that there are differences and distinctions among Jewish and non-Jewish believers. Those of you all who have met me know that I'm 6'6". There are differences, believe me. But common faith first, our common humanity, our common faith in the Lord, our common salvation, common goals, common purposes, that is what stirs people to action rather than facilitates a religious culture of which is what differences and distinctions does, of suspicion, rivalry, mistrust, bitterness. You know, I don't have any, I can't place my confidence in people who believe that God is a God of differences first, rather than common faith and common belief in him first. So you never know what kind of thoughts, what kind of things a meme will get you to start thinking about and to start probing. Okay, from 2C TV yesterday, 1:28 p.m. So this would have been when we were having our show. 2-minute clip. This is very important to look at. Qatar confirms 17% of its liquid natural gas capacity has been knocked out following IRGC strikes, with repairs expected to take 3 to 5 years. Meanwhile, IDF operations in the Caspian Sea have destroyed multiple IRGC naval assets. So in that exchange around a day ago, and we heard about it during the middle of the night, between the IDF, Iran, and then Iran and Qatar bombing natural gas facilities, 17% of Qatar's natural gas capacity has been reduced. And according to this, at least, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to build it back up. So Iran firing back at some of their Gulf neighbors is not going to prove that beneficial, that useful. It's just going to turn them against them. And while we have yet to see some direct military activity by the Gulf states against the Islamic Republic, it appears, and we got a few other things we're going to note, it appears that the momentum has shifted, the opinion has shifted against the Iranians. Of course, this could change. From open source intel yesterday, 1:58 p.m., this is when we were still live yesterday, 20-second clip. This is from Benjamin Netanyahu. There's a clip. It is too early to say whether the Iranian people will take advantage of the conditions. We are working to make sure they will, but in the end, everything will depend only on them. Okay, now, one of the things we know for certain is right now, at the present, I think the strategy is on the part of the U.S. and Israel to obviously eliminate Iran's nuclear aspirations, their ballistic missile program, to weaken the regime, military, their government targets, to soften the regime enough for then the people of Iran to rise up and take out what is left of the Islamic Republic. But here, I mean, ultimately, the destiny of the Iranian people is who? It's the Iranian people. Okay, more from 2C TV. This is from 12:52 p.m. yesterday, so I would have seen this after we had our stream. 2 minutes, 24-second clip. IRGC attacks on Kuwait's oil infrastructure mark a significant escalation. Okay. Among the things discussed here, UAE signals wartime posture with national mobilization messaging. IRGC drones strike Kuwait's Al Amadi refinery and ignite fires at Mina Abdullah. U.S. Central Command continues strikes on IRGC naval assets. Joint U.S.-Israeli operations now targeting North and South simultaneously. And Tusi notes, regional powers are now mobilizing. So as things change on the ground in the region, what are we going to see in the coming days? What are we going to see over the weekend? Okay, here is a very important post. I know that on social media, there are a lot of people coming to a lot of conclusions about Prime Minister Netanyahu's press conference yesterday. Parts of it appear to have been delivered in English, other parts in Hebrew. This is in English. There's a 25-second clip here. Breaking, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu fires back at claims he manipulated President Trump into the Iran war. Does anyone really think that someone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on. Trump always makes his decisions on what is best for America. And indeed, if you look back on some of the history of Donald Trump as a person, Donald Trump as a person several decades ago recognized that Iran was a problem. Donald Trump, when he was just a businessman, a real estate mogul, recognized that Iran was a problem. Yeah, does anyone honestly think that Netanyahu is leading Trump around? No. This just happens to be an issue where America's interests and Israel's interests nicely parallel and nicely complement one another. But as I have said, Israel's interests are, they want to see regime change in Iran, Iran's nuclear aspirations removed, their ballistic missile aspirations removed, their capabilities removed, and the terror proxies removed. Those are good aims for the United States as well, as they all can go, they can all be traced back to the 1979 revolution. But the U.S. also has various global geopolitical goals in mind. Removing China from a cheap source of bargain basement energy. Ending the supply of Iranian drones to Russia. Seeing that the momentum of global influence and global power is reshifted back toward America, back toward the West, and not toward the East. Yes, those are things which are going to benefit Israel as well, but only the United States can do certain things in this conflict that Israel just can't do. Okay, another clip from Open Source Intel, this speech, 29 seconds. And this is in English as well. Netanyahu on Trump. This came out 3:16 p.m. yesterday. I don't think any two leaders have been as coordinated as Trump and I. Trump is the leader and I am his ally. And yes, it is true that, from one perspective, you can say that the state of Israel is subjected to the whims of the world's most preeminent, I'm going to use this term loosely, Gentile power. And right now, that is a power which is very benevolent and very friendly on the whole to the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. And yes, I do believe that's one of the reasons why the United States is blessed and protected in a unique way. Whereas look at what's happening in other countries, which were once favorable toward Israel and are not so much. Now, not so much. But yeah, Trump is very clearly the leader. Okay. The United States of America is unsurpassed in its military and technological capabilities. No, that's not to the detriment of the Israeli Defense Forces and their capabilities. They are great. But the United States has got things, it's got capabilities, and more so, it just has the numbers that a state of Israel can't have. But as Trump rightly recognized in his speech here, Israel is the ideal ally of America. And of course, we also have to note some of the things further on in our stream, observations President Trump has made regarding those who are supposed to be our ideal allies, our fellow partners in NATO. Because some of our partners in NATO are not being as ideal allies as they should be. Okay, your next story, and this is from Open Source Intel, useful clip, 1 minute, 18 seconds, posted yesterday, 3/23. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi visited the UAE and Qatar, calling Iran's attacks sinful and unjustified. He said Arab Gulf security is an extension of Egyptian national security and pledged full support to maintain stability in the GCC. So, now I don't expect to see excuse me, I don't expect to see Egypt, for example, take any direct involvement in this Operation Epic Fury. But Egypt, the Egyptian president, sinful action taken against Gulf states by Iran. That is a very good indicator of the direction the momentum is moving right now. Okay, from the Epic Times story, yesterday, the 19th of March, the headline, Netanyahu says Israel will hold off any further attacks on Iran's giant natural gas field. He also said Iran no longer has the capability to enrich uranium or produce ballistic missiles. Now, this is from yesterday. We can assume some level of accuracy here. Then what we should begin to see in this Operation Epic Fury, Roaring Lion, we should begin to see in the not too distant future the sort of activity, the sort of actions being taken begin to shift all of a sudden. You're going to start hearing more questions about boots on the ground. Not necessarily whole battalions of the army, but special forces. We know that there is a special there's special Marine units with U.S. Marine units which are on the way to the region. They're not intended to be an invasion force, but they are intended to do some specific activity, securing sites, helping mainly, what's going to happen with the Iranian people themselves. So expect the type of operations to begin to shift in the coming days and weeks. Okay, from 2CTV, posted last night, 6:57 p.m. There's a 20-second clip. Iran tonight, the night before Persian New Year. Everyone is excited as Israel and the U.S. continue to hit the IRGC. Women aren't bothering with hijab laws. Dancing, which is illegal now, continue despite IRGC threats. They know this is the final year under Islamic occupation. And indeed, that is what we're all hoping and praying for. We recognize that, I believe, and I've said this before, I said it yesterday, I believe that what is happening in Iran is one of the birth pains of the end time scenario. And of course, in birth pains, just like labor pains in a woman, it goes in stages. You've got a lot of pain, and then a period of release, and then a period of release, and they get quicker and quicker as the contractions get quicker and quicker to the moment of delivery. So let's just chalk up Operation Epic Fury, Roaring Lion 2, a major birth pain, and then we'll go into a period of And will terrorism go away? No. Will Islamification go away? Islamicization? No. It'll just dissipate to other places. But one of the main hubs of it could actually be removed if this is all successful. And, there are ongoing questions. I know a lot of people have, what's been one of the major fads over the past 10, 12 years has been the belief in an Islamic anti-Messiah or antichrist. And that's possible. But if the fall of the Islamic Republic of Iran helps to discredit a lot of the Islamic extremism, Another alternative would be more the religious, ecumenical, all paths lead to God, ethereal, look to the God inside of you type of end time scenario where the anti-Messiah, tries to unite or bring together, not only the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, but Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. All paths lead to the universal consciousness, and I am the one. I am the prism by which you can access that. I mean, that is an end time scenario. I am more inclined toward. Of course, I also know from the turn of the millennium not to paint yourself into a corner. You always talk about what the different possibilities are because, in all likelihood, as humans, there's something we have missed. There's something we have overlooked and not factored into our deliberations. Okay, here is something which some of you all may have seen it on social media, but this was the story which came across my feed today from Zero Hedge. Disclosure, ? U.S. government registers aliens.gov domain. So here there are a number of people, even got picked up by Polymarket. U.S. government secretly registers the aliens.gov domain name. Now, I have not checked out this. We'll just wait and see, of course, what happens. But the discussion about extraterrestrial disclosure, UFOs, UAPs, whatever it is, that is a live wire discussion. So we'll wait and see what happens. One of the things I did take from this, which is kind of interesting, is, we as a ministry, I mean, I talk about how, visit our website, Messianic Apologetics.net, but we've got, other domains registered as well. The most frequent one being Messianic Apologetics.blog, because that used to be the Mirror website a number of years ago. I mean, it all goes to the same place. Likewise, this past fall, and I announced this a few months ago, and we came back from the IMCS Rabbis Conference, I registered the domain Messianic.faith. And the reason I brought it up was because at the Rabbis Conference, I ran out of business cards. So I told people, yeah, you want to check me out? Just go to Messianic.faith. Because if you can't remember Messianic.faith, you probably shouldn't be here. But yes, we'll see what comes from aliens.gov. And the fact that that domain got registered has been noted by many, many people across the spectrum. Okay, our next story. And this is from Sean Hannity. Very useful clip here to watch. It's 1 minute, 15 seconds. An interview with Victor Davis Hanson. Victor Davis Hanson says global signals suggest the tide is turning against Iran, arguing U.S. military dominance. And shifting alliances point toward a potential collapse if pressure continues. So I'll just read through some of this. There's enough evidence to see how things are really going. Europeans would never agree to go anywhere near Iran unless they thought the tide was turning and that we're going to win. Otherwise, they would keep still. And the reason that the petronations of the Gulf survive is they have their finger in the wind and are very attuned to the climate. When you have Al Jazeera praising the United States' bombing campaign and saying that it's been underestimated and is brilliant and effective, you get the feeling that they think not only should the United States finish the job, but that it can and will finish the job. Okay, and you can read the rest later. But yes, there is a growing opinion in certain circles that, and mind you, this evening, during the middle of the night, you can remind yourself, oh, yes, it was 3 weeks ago that Operation Epic Fury started. We've come a very long way. And while we don't want to be presumptuous, where are we going to be in another 3 weeks? Is this conflict going to be wrapping up? Or is it going to enter into that different phase with the people of Iran doing what they need to do? But yeah, a lot are noticing, even the Gulf states, that this is going to probably be a victory. Okay, here's something which I'm passing on as information because, of course, many of us during the past few years, we've seen the direction Candace Owens has gone, Tucker Carlson, especially since the assassination of Charlie Kirk or Nick Fuentes. Now we're seeing Megyn Kelly, Carrie Prejean-Baller, and we have J.P. Sears. This is, of course, 20 minutes, 33 seconds. This is straight from J.P. Sears' X channel, though. Hello, America. Israel is your master now. And he kind of exposes himself as a grifter. He falls into a lot of the same arguments, a lot of the same kind of rhetoric, which others have repeated. So that's just really sad. And of course, earlier in the week, we reported from the weekend that talked about how Israel is a creation of the Rothschild Zionist bankers, the globalists, and Zionism is completely antithetical to Judaism from the Holy Scriptures. Zionism, in its most basic sense, advocates that the people of Israel have a biblical right to the land of Israel, and they should live in the land of Israel, given the eternal promises God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay? But yeah, we do take note of these things. I don't have a decisive answer to a lot of the growing anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. But as I finish this year, a number of projects which have been a 5-year cycle, doing so definitely with the anticipation of new books, new articles, new frequently asked questions entries, and part of our 5 times a week Messianic Insider stream is to be part of an ongoing conversation. So I pass that on to you as information because some of you have probably seen things from J.P. Sears you've really appreciated in the past, and it's just really sad to see him go as an anti-Israel grifter. Okay, here's a post. Rapid Response 47 picked it up. This is what I saw first, but this is from President Trump earlier today, 8:45 a.m. Without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger. They didn't want to join the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. Now that fight is militarily won, with very little danger for them. They complain about high oil prices they are forced to pay, but don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz, a simple military maneuver that is the single reason for the high oil prices. So easy for them to do with so little risk. Cowards, and we will remember. Now, we know President Trump is a lot like, Theodore Roosevelt was. He can be very pushy, like many of you in your life, even with your parents. He can use this kind of, get off your ass and do something logic. From day to day, we hear that, oh, Europe's going to do something. They're not going to do something. They're going to do something. They're not going to do something. And we know that Trump has been very hard and very pushy with NATO because, look, the U.S. pays over half of NATO's expenses. These European countries need to step up and pull some of their own weight and not be so ingrateful and complaining, whiny. You get the idea. So the situation with what NATO countries are going to do or not do, it changes from day to day, but we do take note of those kinds of posts from President Trump. Okay, today's news. Many of you all have already know about this. I announced it earlier. Just very, very sad. This is one of the first posts I saw on this from Fox News at 9:34 a.m. Breaking: martial arts icon and screen legend Chuck Norris passes away at 86, leaving behind a legacy of discipline and devotion. So here, Chuck Norris has passed away at 86. And here is one of the first major eulogies of him by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Sarah and I were deeply saddened to hear of the passing of Chuck Norris, a great friend of Israel and a close personal friend. May his memory be a blessing. Yeah, Chuck Norris was a strong evangelical Christian, strong supporter of Israel, strong supporter of the conservative movement. As I recall, he strongly endorsed a number of years ago Mike Huckabee for the presidency. That's just really, really sad. I mean, I grew up certainly, of course, here in the state of Texas, Walker, Texas Ranger. I watched that show, pretty consistently. I really enjoyed it. It was a good, relatively wholesome show. I remember, one of the most significant movies of his, among all his films, Delta Force. And some of you all, of course, remember Delta Force. There's several Delta Force films, but the one which strikes me is the one where the aircraft got hijacked. They flew to Lebanon. They unloaded all of the Jews in Lebanon. And of course, Delta Force had to go to Israel and then fly to Lebanon and in a special operation, get the Jewish hostages back and then come back to Israel. So, yeah, we're going to Chuck Norris and all the Chuck Norris memes and whatnot. Chuck Norris will be missed, and his absence is going to be felt definitely in the conservative movement here in America. So, our thoughts and our prayers go out to his family, go out to all of his friends, and certainly all of his fans. Okay, from Fox News Today, later at 10:17 a.m., and there's President Trump along with U.S. Navy midshipmen. Breaking, their leaders are all gone. The next set of leaders are all gone, and the next set of leaders are mostly gone. And now nobody wants to be a leader over there anymore. So Operation Epic Fury, Roaring Lion, is steadily taking out the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as that takes place, that is when we should start expecting there to be a shift in the type of conflict. It's going to, right now, we still see the bombings of missile sites, nuclear sites, government sites. But sooner or later, that is going to shift toward, okay, the regime has been softened up enough. Now it's time for the people to do what they need to do. Okay, here's a post on X from Charisma, and we reported on this story yesterday, what the New York Post posted. From Charisma, and this came 11:48 a.m. A three-sided pyramid on Mars in Candor Cosma inside Valles Marineris is going viral again after filmmaker Brian Dobbs resurfaced the image, raising fresh questions about UFO fascination, discernment, and deception. Now, look, whether you like Charisma or not is not the point. The point is that Charisma is one of the main publications everyone across the Messianic community will actually read and pay attention to. Every year at the IMCS Rabbis Conference, every year I've been attending, so I've been to 7 of them now. The last night, yes, Jonathan Cahn gives the presentation, but also Stephen Strang, the director, president of Charisma, is there and says, we've been some of the earliest supporters of the Messianic Jewish movement. Look, Charisma, because their number one person is Jonathan Cahn, is one place where people in the Messianic community will get information from. So are you going to have anybody talk about, is there a pyramid on Mars? Is there not a pyramid on Mars? What we are expecting this year with the Artemis program going back to the moon and with intentions to establish a permanent presence on the moon, within the next 10 years or so, we should be moving toward Mars, establishing some kind of presence on Mars. More and more questions about the universe and humanity's place in it are going to be asked. And even the pop Christian publications are going to pick up on it. So we just file this information away, just like with aliens.gov. We don't know what's going to happen, but we don't want to be caught unaware should some drama of some kind occur with space as the venue. Okay, open source intel today at 11:07 a.m. And there's Karg Island right there. That's one of the major oil and gas depots of Iran. White House officials say the U.S. Army is capable of seizing Iran's strategic Karg Island at any time. Okay, so, all right, we'll wait and see. Everyone from the very start of this has recognized that as a very strategic point, because that's where the oil and gas tankers, or many of them, get filled, and then they go to the commercial market. Here's a very concerning story, and it's from the New York Post, although I've seen other venues pick it up as well. The headline: Iran makes chilling threat to target tourist sites worldwide as spring break kicks off in U.S. Iran threatened Friday to start targeting tourist sites worldwide just as spring break kicked off across the United States. Iranian military spokesperson General Abolfasi Karachi, hope I pronounced that properly, blasted out the chilling warning on state TV as he vowed that popular tourism havens would no longer be safe for Tehran's enemies. Okay, and you can read the rest of this later. This is certainly a reminder, whether you're going on spring break or not, whatever you do or do not do, you have to pay attention to your surroundings. You have to look out for potential threats, potential dangers, suspicious persons. To be honest, we have known about this since 9/11 and even before that. As I grew up, don't get into the car with strangers, right? So when you go to your Messianic congregation, synagogue, church over this weekend, keep your eyes peeled for suspicious people. Okay. Remember, it was last week. What were we sorting through? We were sorting through what the incident which took place, West Bloomfield, Michigan synagogue. I hope people at your congregation or Messianic congregation or synagogue mentioned this publicly to the people. But assume that many people in leadership are not going to know what to do. So that means you have to take some responsibility yourself. Keep your eyes peeled for suspicious persons, whether that's at your congregation, the supermarket, where you do business, etc. Okay, and we're going to close with this. This is a post from the John Root, but it has to do, of course, with Chuck Norris. Real men do live for Christ. It is important to make your peace with Christ while the opportunity exists. Life is so fragile that you never know when it's going to be over. It could be over in the blink of an eye, and then it's too late to accept God's gift of salvation. Chuck Norris. And, well, now we believe that Chuck Norris is in the presence of the Savior. So, of course, we got Passover coming up. Passover, we're going to be remembering the exodus of ancient Israel from Egypt, the plagues upon Egypt, God's deliverance of ancient Israel. But we're also going to be remembering the completed work of the Passover lamb on the tree of sacrifice. He who suffered, was humiliated, died, and was resurrected for us. And hopefully, as we see all of the difficulties taking place in our world today, there are going to be many people who get themselves right with the Lord, not knowing what the next day may bring, what the next week may bring. All right, and just to repeat, please be sure to be following me on social media. You should be following me on social media anyway, but particular on X and on Instagram. So go to MessianicApologetics.net. You see the icons in the upper left-hand column. I had them moved over to that side specifically. You can click on the X icon, the Instagram icon, the other icons as well. But I'm planning to repost different news stories, whether they are from X or from Instagram, which we will, of course, later cover in the news roundups sessions on Messianic Insider. Of course, we got the weekend coming up, so rather than just copy the URL and then later go in and read through the article, watch it, and provide a little summary for you, I'm planning to just post the things, and then we'll go into the log of those on Messianic Insider. So once this episode concludes, the live stream, and then we get it archived, and then we have the different shorts go out. They get posted to YouTube, Instagram, and X. You should see news stories be posted steadily throughout the weekend. And I will repeat this several times over the next few days. But do be following Messianic Apologetics on X and Instagram so you can stay up to date with some of the important things going on. Because I know many of you love the theology roundup. and you get a lot out of it. But some of you all really, really love the news roundup because nobody else in the Messianic community is doing anything like this. And who knows what current events are discussed or not discussed at your local Messianic congregation or synagogue. As always, on behalf of Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support for all of our ministry efforts. Please do consider signing up for a monthly $25 or $50 donation. If you have not already, please do visit my website, messianicapologetics.net, where you can access a wide array of articles, frequently asked questions entries, back issues of our newsletter, Outreach Israel News, and March has just been posted. You can take a look at back episodes of Messianic Insider and different McKee moment shorts. Please be sure to give this episode a thumbs up or a heart, as it will help our exposure on social media, and repost this episode to your social media feeds, Facebook, Instagram, X. Email it to a friend. We will see you again on Monday with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.